Hi everybody, it's me Jill and welcome to Jill Informed. This is the recap of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 3, Episode 4, Bad Weather Betrayal. All right guys, we're still in Scottsdale. It is still night 2. And oh yeah, we're still talking about Angie and the courtside seats. I swear to God, if this is the thread that carries out through the season, I don't know what I'll do. Probably just keep recapping. Let's just hope for the best. So just a little reminder, last week we left off with Heather screaming "fuck you" to Whitney as she leaves and goes in her bedroom. Jen follows Heather, and now Meredith comes into the dining room and she's sitting there with Whitney. Like, what's going on? They're both trying to figure out, Jen and Meredith are both trying to figure out what happened between Heather and Whitney. We see Heather's confessional.
Tonight was supposed to be hot girls in lingerie, gnawing away at hunks of meat. And then Whitney decided to unload all of these rumors about Lisa giving blowies for basketball seats. And now she's dragged me into it, and I'm a liar in lingerie without a stake to be found.
And then to Jen, Heather says, Whitney said, I heard some nugget about Lisa doing some guy for courtside jazz tickets. Meanwhile, Whitney is telling Meredith, Heather didn't even know what I was going through because I just sit there and I take shit and listen to her. Whitney is discovering that because of her past abuse, she used to, let people walk all over her. And so now that she's realizing that, she's not going to let that happen anymore. And people can't handle it. I'm not sure how that applies to Heather. Because at this point, Heather doesn't even know what you've had a revelation and that you're a new person now. And Heather's not doing anything to you. She's denying that she heard the story. Maybe she didn't. So, Whitney's just very drunk. Meredith had to take the tongs away from her because she was banging them on the table. So Heather and Jen return. They come back out, sit down at the table. And Heather said, don't call me a liar, Whitney. You called me a liar first. Now Heather's mad again. She's up on her feet. Get your facts straight. Whitney's up on her feet. The facts are Angie. Call Angie. Should we call the general manager of the Jazz? Because maybe he knows what's going on. Lisa, I don't care who Lisa fucked. I don't care who Meredith fucked. I want to come together and support our friend who's facing, 50 years in prison. Oh my God. Poor Jen. Elderly and everything. But this whole night has been about you, Whitney, and you and Lisa, she says to Meredith. That was not the purpose of this trip. Let's get focused, Whitney. No, you get focused. Because you were fucking loaded that night, Heather. Because Angie said... Oh my God. Heather's like, okay, if I was loaded, then don't hold me accountable for remembering this. Then she pushes Whitney out of her way and almost knocks Whitney off of her very unstable feet. I've never seen Heather this mad, let alone at Whitney, her cousin. Those two have been thick as thieves. So Heather, she's leaving again and she goes, you just lost me forever, Whitney. You did not lose me forever, Heather. Heather. No, you lost me, bitch. You lost me. Now Jen gets Lisa, who was in her room, to come to Heather's room. And Lisa's like, thank you for being a friend to me, Heather. I really appreciate it. I love that. And Heather goes, you don't have to thank me. I want to be your friend. Of course I will have your back. Then Lisa goes back to bed. Now Whitney stumbles into her room and closes the door. And next thing I know, it's 2:11 a.m. and Jen has brought in a professional dancer in lingerie. Heather, oh, is she going to perform for us? Jen, no, Crystal Pussy is an instructor. Heather, oh, how rude of me to assume. In her confessional, Heather's like, where did she come from? How did Jen get her? Would she fly her in from Atlantic City? In Jen's confessional, she said, in the current Shaw squad, you gotta wear a lot of hats. So Okay, so Crystal Pussy is Jen's makeup girl, who is also their twerking instructor. I cannot, you guys, I need to see Meredith attempt to twerk. Like, I cannot believe Meredith is one of just 3 women who are here for the lesson. But yeah, I have to see it. Okay, well, she is just as stiff and awkward as I imagined. She really can't do it. Side note, they showed this instructor twerking, I think in the trailer for this season. And not gonna lie, I thought it was Heather. It was not. Okay, it is the next morning. Well, afternoon. It's 12:03. We see Jen getting out of bed. Heather's just waking up. For some reason, she's got a lot of loose milk duds just floating around in the bed with her. Then she gets out of bed and she's like picking up all these torn pieces of paper off the floor. And it turns out it was a note from Whitney that says, Heather, no words needed here. Bad weather, no matter what. I love you so much. XOXO, Whitney. So I'm guessing drunk Heather tore it up last night before she got in bed because she's mad at Whitney. Anyway, it's a very raining day. Heather goes to see Meredith in her room. She's got the little balcony. In the kitchen, Whitney's getting up. Jennifer hugs her, asks how she's doing. Oh, I was wrong. Heather tells Meredith that Whitney tore up the friendship note that she left in her room and then threw it on Heather's floor. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Jen is asking Whitney if she thinks that she's, can have a talk with Heather. And Whitney says, yeah, but I just feel completely betrayed. So Whitney is going to see her brother and sister today. In Meredith's room, Heather tells Meredith that, she's like, I love Whitney. I would never speak ill of her. Jen has to pack up because she's leaving that day. She has a plane to catch because she's going right to New York for trial preparation. Then we see Whitney take off to go to her brother's house. She's hoping to find some relief and comfort in meeting with her half-siblings, Curtis and Kelly. Curtis has a beautiful house. It's in Queen Creek, Arizona. I don't know where that is. I assume it's near Scottsdale. And Whitney, rings the doorbell. She just gets these huge bear hugs from her brother and her sister. Curtis's wife is also there. Okay, so they are half siblings because they share the same father. I guess they weren't very close growing up. And Whitney said that when their dad divorced their mother and was with Whitney's mom, that her dad focused mostly all of his attention on Whitney and her sister. She said she saw them, her half brother and sister, only a handful of times throughout her childhood. Oh my God, these two are so loving toward Whitney. She says, I hate that we didn't have a connection growing up. And both of them right away say, we did. No, we did. Curtis said, I always felt like we were a lot alike. When I went to Utah before I went on the mission, I spent some time with you there. And Whitney goes, you did? And he said, yeah, I was in college. You probably don't remember. She tells them that she has talked to Will, who is her other half sibling. We've seen Will on the show before. And yeah, I'm trying to remember this now because I think Will is her half sibling from her mother's side then. But it was confusing because I think Will had maintained a relationship with Whitney's dad. So that's interesting. Anyway, she shares with them that Will has been going through this healing journey, and so has she. And that, she has uncovered that she was used and abused. In Whitney's confessional, she says, even though it's not the same trauma, we all experienced trauma by the same person that we all knew and should have been able to trust. Okay, so obviously that's her dad. What we know about her dad from season 1 was that he was a hairstylist, has wild hair, he's an addict, and she and Justin paid for her dad to have this inpatient treatment at this rehab place. He was getting better, and Whitney was the one that always tried to keep a relationship going with him. And by the time of the reunion, I remember feeling shocked. This is the reunion for season 1. I remember feeling shocked that Whitney said, I haven't spoken to my dad in whatever, X number of months. I guess it not because of her. She had been trying to reach out to him. He kind of stopped, I guess. So I don't know. The guy has a lot of issues. I think that what she means by like the trauma being different, I'm sure he was not a great dad to any of them. What I'm not clear on, and I don't know if this is ever going to be cleared up for us or not, but what I'm unsure of is what kind of abuse Whitney is talking about. When this first came out, like episode 2, was it? Or was it just last week? In any case, I was pretty sure she meant either physical or sexual abuse, but I didn't think it was her dad. I just thought this was another relative or something like that. But I believe now that the person that she received abuse from, or that they all have, I think is her dad. I don't want to say, like, I don't know for sure, obviously. So now I don't know what kind of abuse, and I don't know. It's just creepy. I just hope it wasn't what I'm thinking it was, But really, who else could it be but her dad, right? Who else could she be talking about? Anyway, Curtis said that he learned pretty early on, that hurt people, that saying. And I think the implication is maybe that their dad's own childhood was possibly abusive as well. So yeah, it's sad. And you guys, what I thought was just endearing before with the sister and how she's like keeps holding on to Whitney, like holding her hands or putting her arm around her. Now, I don't know. It feels like a lot. I'm just saying it's making me wonder about Kelly's trauma in a way. Anyway, the lesson here seems to be that the dad was what he was, isn't going to change, and that it's okay to let go. And I think that's where Whitney's issue had been coming from. Like, she wanted to keep giving him chance after chance because she didn't want to give up on her father. And now I think what Curtis is saying to her is, it's okay to let go. You have to move on. Move on with your life. It's okay to let go of this person. Okay, so meanwhile, back at the house, Lisa walks into the kitchen. Now it's 2:15 p.m. Heather, hi, good morning. I have bacon, eggs, and hash browns. So they get some food and they're sitting at the table, and Lisa said, so Jen's leaving soon. Now Meredith gets up and joins them. Good morning, good morning. It's 2:25 p.m. There's a quiet breakfast with Lisa, Meredith, and Heather. Heather's the only one that's speaking to both of them. They're not really talking to each other right now. And then we get a big, good morning. That's right. It's cruise director Jen Shaw, bright as a daisy, the happiest person on this trip, the one facing 50 years in prison. Yeah, she's been managing to keep her spirits up and have fun. So let's drag her down now. Yeah, Meredith is like, Jen, how are you feeling this morning? Again, not morning, it's 2:45. Jen, I had a panic attack this morning. I'm going to New York by myself for another mock trial. This is the first time I'll be hearing our side of the arguments. Last week it was the prosecution's side. I walked out twice and slammed a door. It's hard to sit there and listen to lies, and you can't talk. Heather, oh yeah, like you have to be like stoic. And Meredith said, you have to keep like a blank expression. And Jen said, no, in fact, my lead attorney said, Jen, I'm going to need you to not get Botox. Heather, what? Heather can't imagine a world without Botox. Plus, that's kind of her business, right? Beauty Lab, I'm sure they do Botox there, among many other expensive treatments. Jen's nodding her head. She's like, yeah, yesterday you were talking about something emotional and crying, but your face wasn't moving. I need your face to move. So they laugh at that. And Heather goes, so you're definitely taking the stand? Like you're testifying? And Jen said, well, I have no issue testifying, but we just have to see how it goes. I don't know how they're going to want to do it. She talks about how this trip was important to her because she needed a reprieve from thinking about it. Okay, so Whitney's back now from her brother's house. Jen needs to leave in like 45 minutes. In Whitney's confessional, she said that she wants nothing to do with Heather. So she's still just as angry as Heather is. So she said to Jen, are you packed? And Jen goes, pretty much. But, pretty much for me means, and Lisa goes, she's not. And everybody laughs, and then they go to help her pack. Lisa's putting clothes in her suitcase, and Heather's like gathering all her pieces of hair. putting them in a bag. And now we get this really sad music. The car pulls up to take her to the airport, and the ladies are walking her out slowly. There's a group hug. It's very, very sad. But, the elderly. After she leaves, the four of them walk back into the house, and Lisa says that she's overwhelmed and she needs to go take a nap. Lisa, you've done nothing but sleep. I don't know. She just doesn't want to film? Anyway, Heather's like, that's a great idea. I think I'll do the same. Okay, but at least Heather was up at 2:15 learning how to twerk. Lisa was sound asleep. Anyway, before Lisa goes, she and Meredith hug for a really, really long time. I mean, some might say uncomfortably long. In Meredith's confessional, she says, with Jen's trial looming, it's given me perspective on letting things go. So anyway, Lisa goes to bed, and now Meredith hugs Whitney and Heather. Again, really long time. And they each other, like they're hugging in a circle. I don't know. Okay, it is Scottsdale night 3, people, and it had been raining all day. It is still raining, and we see Whitney dressed with a little jacket. She's got a glass of wine in her hand and her purse, and she is waiting by the front door. First one there. I guess that's usual. She calls out to the others, we have reservations. Let's go. So they are all headed now to Dierks Bentley's Whiskey Row. They sit down at the table and they all do a shot. And then they decide, Meredith decides to go around the table. Everyone just pick one word for them to toast to. And she goes, and I don't have my word yet, so somebody else go first. Lisa goes, okay, I'll go. Love. Right away, Meredith goes, peace. Heather, friendship. Whitney, long pause. Honesty. In Whitney's confessional, she says, just because Heather wants to sweep this under the rug does not mean we're good. We're going there. I know I'm not lying. And I know that she hurt me deeply. So now Whitney is showing them pictures on her phone of her and her brother and sister. And Meredith says, I lived in Scottsdale for a year of my life. And Heather's like, we're just finding this out now? How? Why? And she goes, I just thought of it now. Okay, you didn't think of it when somebody suggested Scottsdale as the girls' trip? Okay, so she tells everyone that her sister had chronic bronchitis when they were growing up. So they moved to Scottsdale for a year to be in the desert to dry out her sister's lungs. And then she tears up because she's having this memory of her father. She said, my favorite restaurant when we lived here that I loved so much was a place called Pinnacle Peak. And I would always make my father wear a tie because they would cut off your tie. So he would always do that for her. And I guess she thought that was so funny. Then we see a very adorable picture of a little tiny Meredith with her dad. And I can see Brooks in this picture of little Meredith. I totally can see Brooks's face. So Heather excuses herself to go to the restroom. And Meredith asks Whitney how she's feeling about Heather after last night. Whitney, really hurt. So Whitney seems to think that she was doing something very difficult last night, speaking her truth. And for Heather to call her a liar, it really cut me deep. She's the last person that I would expect to do that. Here's what I don't understand. How is telling Lisa that Angie says she had sex for basketball tickets your difficult truth? And you told Heather that she heard Angie say it. And Heather replied, that's a lie. I didn't hear her. That's not Heather calling you a liar. Heather never denied that Angie said it. She's not saying you're lying about that story. She's saying she doesn't remember it or she never heard it. Also, you told Heather she was very drunk that night. So isn't that even more of a possibility that Heather doesn't remember her saying it? And also, the thing that's missing here is motive. Why would Heather deny having heard that? If she heard it and never told anybody, that makes her look like a good friend. who just heard something and was like, okay, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to breathe a word of that to anybody. Either that makes her look like a good friend, or like she said, are you kidding? You don't think I would love to have had that little nugget of information about Lisa? Because things have not been great between Lisa and Heather. So there's no motivation for her to say, I never heard it. That's why I believe her. She either forgot it or she didn't hear it. It's as simple as that. Okay. All right. So Whitney is attaching her newly discovered trauma to like not being believed or not feeling heard, this feeling of being taken advantage of. She's having all those feelings. And I empathize with Whitney, but she's assigning a lot of blame to Heather that is just not fair. Okay, well, Heather's back. And she's like, so what did I miss? You don't want to know. Whitney goes, I was telling them that in a very difficult situation, you weren't there and I needed you to be there for me. You hurt me deeply, Heather. And Heather goes, I'm unclear on what was the tough moment that you needed me to corroborate a story that you heard, Whitney. To say that you knew it. Just be honest, Heather. You and I have had many conversations about Lisa. And Heather goes, not about blowjobs for court seats. Never, not once, never, ever. Then Heather says, if I choose not to retain something in my memory, just so I can pull it out and hurt somebody with it later, that's my choice. It has nothing to do with my loyalty to you, Whitney, or anybody. Then she's like, if you want to talk about it, go ahead and talk about it. I don't have to. I don't have to sign up for every single issue you have, Whitney. You did not need me. Why do you think you needed me? To say Lisa gave a blowjob for courtside seats? Lisa's like, can we stop saying that, please? Because that's upsetting. Now Heather's trying to tell Whitney, you planned this trip for Jen, but you made it all about you. Whitney, I did not. Heather, are you kidding? That first night of dinner was all about you. You and your childhood trauma, not Jen. Ouch. Oh, Heather, okay. Had me, lost me. I get what she's saying, but yikes. She just discovered that childhood trauma after the trip was planned, by the way. So it's not like she meant to be talking about it, but I don't know. Heather's delivery is just so cold and harsh. It feels really bad. Whitney is trying to explain to Heather that she is the one person that she felt safe with. And now just to find out that Heather is the one that's hurting her and causing her pain. Whitney's like, I'm sick of not having a voice and feeling dismissed. Poor timing, poor delivery. Because I have something to say, but no one listens to me. I needed you in that moment to validate that I was speaking the truth. You guys, I almost understand her. I think she felt like Heather saying, I didn't hear that. Whitney took that to mean she was basically saying it never happened. But she wasn't saying that. And also maybe Whitney felt like, oh, you're going to let me hang by myself here. No, I didn't hear that. I don't know. I can see both sides of this one. And Whitney goes, well, I'm cleansing a lot of my family out of my life right now. And Heather's mad. She wants Whitney to just admit that she stirred up a lot of shit on this trip that was supposed to be for celebrating Jen, who swindled primarily elderly people. And then Heather says, Jen, who's facing real problems and real issues. Okay, not cool, Heather. This feels like Kyle saying to Sutton, well, we don't know that you had miscarriages, right? Are you questioning whether she had childhood trauma? Because you never heard that story before? It feels a little bit like that. I'm definitely hoping that she's not implying that her childhood trauma isn't a real issue. Anyway, Heather's yelling at her now about, oh, and you're such a truth seeker? Well, that's not true to say that she did something courtside. I'm sorry, the rumor isn't that she actually gave the blowjob courtside. It's that she gave it somewhere, I'm sure very private, in exchange for courtside tickets. Oh, that she's letting her husband and son go too. So, I mean, they're benefiting, really. That is truly a selfless act then. But anyway, even Lisa in her confessional says, at this point, I think Heather is unaware of how insensitive she's being. She should be asking Whitney how she's doing. Anyway, Heather's just like, this trip got derailed and I'm not the one that derailed it. Whitney, you pushed me into a wall and called me a liar. Heather needs to stop talking. This is not a good look for Heather. Someone said something about not talking about her feelings, and then Heather goes, you only talk about your feelings. What if we just want to have a fun, light, easy dinner? I mean, yeah, I get it, but I don't think you can tell someone who just learned about childhood trauma that they had to just keep that to yourself right now so that we could just have a fun, light, easy dinner. Yeah, no. Whitney's like, okay, we can do that. Well, not now, you can't. I mean, I don't know how they're going to have a fun dinner now after all that. Anyway, the food comes and Meredith said, okay, guys, we're leaving tomorrow, so let's all have fun for a minute. And Whitney goes, I'm down for that. Meredith, okay, Lisa, I'm in. Okay, Heather. Well, I'm always in. So yeah, great. Having a super fun dinner. I'm sure. They can't even talk about the weather because that's Whitney and Heather. I don't know what they're going to talk about. We can't talk about Angie in the courtside seats. Jen in her trial, her possible 50 years in jail. That's a light subject. Okay, so back at the house, everyone is in their matching PJs, having ice cream and strawberries and cheesecake. Meredith passes out gifts for everyone. And it's like, I guess, a tracksuit and a baseball cap that has FBI. It's like a EF, like a science, like an element symbol or something, then a bumblebee, and then an eye, like an eyeball. And the joke is last year, Meredith was accused of contacting the FBI to tell them where Jen Shaw was. Yeah, so they all thought it was funny. And of course, now they're talking about Jen and how with everything she's facing, she was still able to dance and spray rosé and talk into her megaphone, and how remarkably she's able to compartmentalize. Lisa's like, yeah, I couldn't. If I had that facing me, like, there's no way I could have acted like her. Heather agrees. Lisa said, I think she'll have a good outcome, though, because she's got a great attitude. They talk about what that looks like. Heather's like, well, what is a good outcome? Acquittal on the first day? And Meredith said, well, I don't think anything's going to be decided the first day. They talk about everything in the news and all the co-defendants taking a plea deal. We see an article that says, by refusing a plea deal, Jen Shaw faces 50 years in jail. Heather says, I think Jen's afraid, but she doesn't know how to talk about it or express it. That she's either like one extreme or the other. She's like acting wild and crazy. Everything's great. Like she doesn't even know she's got a trial coming up, or she's, upset. I mean, I think she seemed like she was handling it well that morning before she left for the airport. She was upset, talking about it rationally though. So Lisa goes, is it bad that she's the last one left? Because everybody but Jen has accepted a plea deal. Meredith, in terms of a trial, yeah. Lisa, is she still eligible for a plea deal? Well, we know the answer to that because she ends up taking one. But Meredith just said, when you're dealing with the government and wanting to make a deal, they want to know what you'll give them in return. And it's usually a bigger fish. And so Heather goes, is Jen the big fish? And Meredith said, I don't know. Heather asks, do you think Stewart's going to testify against her? And Meredith said, Stewart actually pled to a different charge. He has 70. 70 charges against him? How many does Jen have or had? I don't know. Anyway, Lisa goes, wait, how do you know this? Meredith's like, I read it in the news. Whitney goes, she went to law school too. So him taking a plea deal could be good for Jen because he's admitting guilt? And Meredith's just like, odds are he's definitely not on her side. Yeah. I don't think him taking a plea deal was a good thing for Jen. He worked for her. It was her company. So I don't know if there is a bigger fish than Jen, but Jen is definitely a bigger fish than Stuart. And if Stuart took a plea deal, that cannot be good for Jen. And also Jen being the last one, the holdout. I mean, I don't think that's a good thing either. Heather's like, Stuart was so dedicated to her. We see this like montage of Jen and Stuart.
To testify against her. And can you imagine if she's sitting in that courtroom and he has to take the witness stand? Imagine her having to face Stuart and have him plead guilty to things that she's innocent of.
Heather goes, did you ever imagine that he had it in him to testify against her? There's a lot of things you don't know about people, I guess. And that is the end of episode 4. Thank you guys for being here. Again, I'm trying to make these a little bit shorter. I don't know how much shorter they're going to be, but I want to get at least a couple of them out a week so that I can catch up and be recapping at the same time that everybody's watching the episode on TV. So wish me luck. All right, that's it for me. Thank you so much. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. And if you would like notification every time I have a new video come out, please click on the bell icon. And I will see you next time for the next recap of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Bye.